Thanks, everyone. I'm really happy to be here and excited to share more. The theme of Collaborate could not be more perfect for the story of the work that I do and the great people that I get to work with. Basically, the whole point is none of what I do is possible without all of the people around me. So it's really great to be here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I do, which is a program called School Grown, which is basically farming schoolyards here in the TDSB, and how we do that. And I'm really fortunate to be able to do that. To start, a bit of some ABCs of food literacy. So when you recognize it, A, what do we have? What food brand? B, C, D, McDonald's. That one's usually like right away. E, F? Yeah, so it's pretty quick. We do this often with students of all ages, junior kindergarten all the way through grade 12. We do it with adults all the time. And these are really like right on the tip of the tongue. People are pretty quick. Okay, this next one. Shout it out when you recognize this locally grown vegetable. Celery root, I heard it. That bottom one? Kale. Yeah, kale. Purple carrots, which you can purchase today at the end of the talk, grown at our school farm. So, common experiences, that one's a little slower, a little bit more hesitant. Okay, this next one, let me know if you can recognize this seed that you would plant in your garden, and it would grow into a food that you probably eat all the time. Anybody? No? Cassie does school gardens. She's like, these are onions. What about this one? Spinach. Oh, what about this one? This one's my favorite one. Beets. Yeah, I heard it. Beets. So what we have right now is a situation in our world where people are very removed from the food system. We get food, we eat it all the time, but we often don't really understand that food, where it comes from, who grew it, how it was grown, what kind of soil it was in, what does that soil feel like, what does it taste like, what does it look like, is it good quality soil? And it wasn't always like that. So here is a picture of a school farm from way back. Farming used to be part of an education. If you went to school, you learned about growing food, you learned about cooking food, you learned about consuming that food and that whole system. And there are still schools that do that, and it's great, but we've kind of lost that in our education system. And so one way that Food Shares tried to work on that is by turning back to that model of really productive school gardens. So this is right here in your city. This is in Scarborough at Bendale BTI, which is a technical school at Lawrence and Midland, and Food Share built this garden in 2009. In the first year, we had funding for students, we had funding for all the supplies and materials, we had funding for staff. It was great. We installed this quarter-acre garden. There was this huge energy and excitement around it. Year 2, we had this huge garden and we have no funding, which is a common experience for people who work in nonprofits and social enterprises and that type of thing. And so around this time, I worked at Food Share, but I didn't work in this program. I was doing education with students that wasn't in gardens. It was more so in classrooms. And I wanted to farm. My grandparents farm. I come from a family of farmers, and I wanted to be outside in the sun, and I wanted to connect with the soil. So I quit my job. I left Food Share, and my partner and I got married, and we took a year-long honeymoon, which was we were just going to go to Vancouver. That was the plan. We're just going to go. And even at the time, I was like, I want to work in food. I like farming, but I had no idea what I was doing. So we just went. We drove across the country, ended up in Vancouver, and I found this place, which is one of now my most favorite places in the whole world. So this is a half-acre farm built on a parking lot in Vancouver's downtown east side. It's Soul Food Street Farms. One day we were wandering downtown in the pouring rain trying to do something when you have no job. and you're trying to make it work in a new city, and the gates to this farm were open, and I just went in and annoyed them until they said I could stay. And I did a full season apprenticeship with this farm. And this farm is all about trying to grow as much food as you possibly can in an urban space really tightly so that you can use that revenue to employ people from the neighborhood. So we did things like once we ran out of space this way, we started to go this way. So we would grow our strawberries in these tall PVC pipes. We had hundreds of these around the perimeter of the farm. So that's the strawberry harvest on the side there. The season I was there, we took this sort of bird's eye view of an old gas station, which was empty for several years because it's contaminated soil, and whoever digs into the soil is going to be responsible for the remediation, so no one wants to develop it. So we worked with the city, negotiated a lease, and we turned that site into a site with 4 200-foot high tunnels where we were producing lots of tomatoes and melons and cucumbers. We built these, which is one of the things I'm most proud of. If you ever think building a greenhouse is hard, it's extra hard in June in Vancouver when it pours rain. Like 13 hours a day, so I'm really proud of this one. But this is some of the really great food that we were able to grow on land that really was just vacant for years, that nobody wanted to touch. If you haven't ever tried a Charente melon or a sun-gold tomato, you have not lived. I recommend it. The other big project we did is we turned this huge, 4-acre parking lot. We took half of it, so that was still 2 acres of just asphalt, and turned it into a farm. So that's me. Laying out a couple thousand shipping pallets that we built our farm on top of. And that's what we turned that parking lot into. So part of it was just looking at cities, looking at spaces, looking what's in your community, and how can you repurpose it, rethink it, and reuse it. When I was putting together pictures for this talk, I found this picture online, which I didn't even know existed of me. But look how happy I am. It's like the day I got married and the day I harvested these strawberries. That's how excited I am about life. So what I found in Vancouver is that farming is what I love, and I want to share that with other people and give people that experience. And so around the same time, back in Toronto, they have this farm, this garden at Bendale. They don't have the funding. They're trying to make it work. So around the same time, I would set my alarm for 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up, go on Skype with my friend Justin, who worked at Food Share, and we would dream about how we were going to make it work and think about what were the things we were doing at Soul Food that we could transfer to Scarborough, that we could use at Food Share. And at that same time, we found this magical place. So this is in Toronto. It's Eastdale Collegiate Institute, which is at Gerrard and Broadview, a really incredible high school that was built with almost no green space around it. That's the streetcar tracks, 2 roads, a quarter-sized soccer field. And so up on the top, if you look up at that big tall wall, on the other side of that wall is what was supposed to be a rooftop tennis court, which they don't do too often these days. But there was this huge instructional space that was meant for people. It had a big 10-foot wall around it. It had stairs went up to it, but it was also vacant. Teachers weren't really going up there. It was hard to use the space. They called us and said, can you come and build a garden? And Food Share said, no, we're too busy. They'll never let us do it on the rooftop. We can't do it. And they said, can you come and look? And we said, no. And they said, can you please come and look? And finally they said, okay, fine, we'll go look. And look at this beautiful place. So what we did was access some funding, and my colleague Justin, who is an engineer, designed this space just using Google SketchUp and whatever sort of ideas we had. A lot of these garden beds were modeled off of what we were doing at Soul Food, and we built this. So this is part of the installation. The whole rooftop now is built on garden beds, on shipping pallets that are all movable and modular. So we were able to work with the school board to make it fixable. If they ever have to fix the roof, we just move everything to the other side. We do things like grow in buckets, and so now we've turned this half-acre empty space that was just sitting that the school board owned into a really productive space for growing food. The only way we could do this was because of all of the incredible people who were on this team. So we have someone who's raised, I would say, probably millions of dollars in the course of her lifetime, writing grants for nonprofits. We have me, that's old news. We have Brooke as a dietitian, a child and youth worker, an engineer, a carpenter, an agronomist, a teacher, a dietitian, and an urban planner. So that's how you make these things happen, when you have all of those different insights and ideas and collective experience. So when you come up against a roadblock, because we had 100 roadblocks, there's always someone who says, what about this? What about that? We can try it this way. We can do this. And sometimes it doesn't work, and then you just try the next thing. So now we have 2 school farms. We have Bendale in Scarborough. We have Eastdale downtown. Schools are full of infrastructure and resources that as a farmer, it would cost me so much money to get a walk-in fridge, to build a processing tent to wash our produce, to have an indoor space for an office. Schools have that. There's so many resources in our community that largely are underutilized that we can often use and work with people and develop partnerships. So part of it was just working with the school board to use what was already there instead of building things from scratch. So now we say we have these 2 sites, we're well-resourced, what do we want to do with them? And so this is where I want to highlight a few things. The youth unemployment rate in Toronto is 18%, which is double what it is for just the average unemployment rate. So that's high. But if you look, especially you break it down a little bit, for Aboriginal youth it's 35%. These are people who want to work and can't find work. For racialized youth it's 33%, and for newcomer youth it's 33%. I would say 33%, that's a crisis, right? That's a real issue that we have in our city. The second one is graduation rates. The TDSB has an overall graduation of 78%, which is pretty good. But for Black youth it's 64%, and for Latino youth, it's 69. These are self-identified categories. For students who are in an academic stream, so in grade 8, they decide academic or applied. So imagine deciding your future, which many of you probably did, when you're 13. You go academic, 88% of those kids graduate. You go applied, and many of these students are streamed into this one, are put into applied. That graduation rate is 59%. And this one's a big one. They did a cohort study of students, identify a bunch of students in grade 9, follow them all the way till the end of their education and see where they end up. Students who had all 8 credits at the end of grade 9, 58% of them had confirmed acceptance into a university. Students who had 6 or less, so if they only failed 2 courses, 2.7% had confirmed attendance at university. So if you fall behind in credits, even 1 or 2 credits in grade 9, the odds that you're going to catch up are so low. And then you face an unemployment crisis. So we're saying if we have these 2 farm sites, if we have the capacity to employ people and hire people and grow food, we're going to focus on trying to fix those 2 things. So we want to provide paid employment, we want to provide credits, and we want to try and hire students who face systemic, outside, external forms of oppression to try and get into that sort of crisis. So now we have School Grown. We started calling it School Grown, and we run it like a farm. So what we do is we hire 14 youth farmers. Look how lovely they are. Many of them are back there. They're in this picture. And what they get is paid employment, full-time, Monday to Friday, $11 an hour. They come back as leadership students. They get a bonus. And they also have the option of signing up for a 2-credit co-op. So they're getting credits, catching up on credits. If they're missing out, getting ahead on credits, and a paycheck, which for us, we grow food, and they can take that home. But part of our work is selling that food so we can generate revenue so that we can pay them so that they can then buy food in a dignified way. So income security and food security are pretty much the same thing. You can't have the one without the other one. So that's a big part of our work. The way that we generate that revenue is through selling at restaurants. So this is Oliver Lee. He's the head chef at the Chef's House restaurant at George Brown College. We went to George Brown and said, are you interested in buying our food? We had a meeting with John Higgins, who's on Chopped now. He's a fancy dude. And I showed him my price list, and I was so nervous. And I was like, oh, he's going to think our food's too expensive. I don't know. And he tossed the price list aside. He said, show me your hands. And I was like, this is the weirdest meeting I've ever had. And I I showed him my hands, and he's like, yeah, those are farm hands. I'll buy your food. So because he believed in the project, he believed in getting young people growing. He knew the food was good. He already wanted to buy local. So find those people who already are convinced and then work with them because they want to be there and they want to be with you. So we're able to sell quite a lot of food to them because they have this huge institutional budget. Right? Which is great. This is me doing a lettuce delivery. He made the whole kitchen stop and he dumped the lettuce on the table and he was like, look at this. This is Oliver. He's like, tell them about how this was grown. So we have young people at our program farming, but then they're providing food for young people who are in school learning to cook. So looking at all of the ways that in urban environments we can connect people to food. We also work with our neighbors. So this is a mom who comes and picks up her son every day after school. And then after a while, she started just rolling down her window and be like, what do you got today? And we would be like, well, because we'd be washing food. And we're like, carrots, we got some green onions. And so now we have regulars in the neighborhood who drive up and they'll be like, I'll take some kale. And someone like runs out back and harvests some kale and washes it and gives it to them. So looking at the people who are already around you, right? The picture over there is we did a teacher harvest share last year. So we have all these adults come into the school every day anyways. They're interested in buying the food. We had the business class market a harvest share. The teachers paid $15 a week for $20 worth of food. The horticulture students harvested it, and our co-op students packaged it and delivered it. And we didn't have to take the food anywhere. Like, those people are already there, and they already want to contribute. It was pretty great. And then a big piece of what we do is go to farmers markets. So we sell 2 full-season farmers markets throughout the summer, and the students do it. Like, there's staff there, but if you were here this morning, you would have seen the students, like, setting out all that food, weighing out all those packages. They handle cash, they merchandise, they set up all the signs. And, you know, at the beginning, the students don't always even know the names of everything that we're growing. And then by the end, like, this is Cody. The first couple weeks, like, he didn't want to talk to anybody at the market, like, so nervous. He always did the job where you, like, package greens in the back. And he'd be like, yeah, I'll help you out. And by the last week, he was, like, confidently standing over by those peppers and, like, really, like, articulately describing, like, the difference in flavor between a Tiburon poblano and a sweet Carmen pepper. Like, that's pretty great. So a big part of that is also being able to generate revenue. We can take our food to a market where people are coming to buy food, and they're already bought in on the process and want to sell more, which is pretty great. We do cooking classes, so the students are able to pick recipes that they actually want to learn and then learn how to cook them while we prioritize using the food from the farm so that when they're at the market, they can articulate, like, when someone says, what do I do with this squash? If their answer is like, someone's just going to put the squash down. But if you start describing, like, oh, you can grill it with some olive oil and a little bit of sea salt, and you start describing flavors and describing textures, people are going to buy it. And so part of it, too, is, like, building on all those different skills and the ways that food is connected, which is pretty fun. We go on field trips, so finding all of the people in our city that are doing similar things. So the West End Food Co-op, and we went and talked to them about different models of organizing a business and what is a cooperative model. We went on a field trip to, this is Fresh City Farms up at Downsview Park. And David, in the black T-shirt there, he's a student that on the first day, like emphatically said he hates eating vegetables. Like, the first couple weeks, like, didn't want to try anything when we were harvesting. And by the end of the program, when we were walking the fields, like, he turned to Phil, the farm manager, and I overheard him say, looks like you got a flea beetle problem on your lacinato kale. Like, and he was so confident and, like, proud that he was able to walk into a different environment, identify what was going on, meet those people, be able to have a conversation with them, which is pretty great. So there's a lot of just, like, growth and development that happens. We're also in the school in the fall and the spring. So that's when we're connecting stuff to the curriculum. We work with the horticulture class or the special education class or the English class and get them out involved in the garden. One thing we realized, though, is that this program is third year. We don't really have a curriculum for our program. So when the students come in the summer, when they do co-op with us, we don't have a curriculum, which in some ways is great because everything that we do emerges from the questions of the students and what it is that they want to see and what it is that they want to learn. But in some ways that's hard, like when you hire new staff and they're like, what's the curriculum? And you're like, we don't know. So sometimes it is nice to say, like, this is what our program's about. It's about learning these things. So we had a moment where we could say either we were going to, as a staff team, write a curriculum for young people, or we're going to hire those young people to write a curriculum for themselves because young people are brilliant. They're super smart, and they have a lifetime of experience, and we want to harness that, and we want to draw on that. So what we did is we wrote a grant that hired these students into well-paid jobs. They got $15 an hour because we wanted to make sure they knew that their work was valuable and their knowledge was valuable, and they wrote a curriculum for our farming program. So they said, by the end of the summer, these are the things you should know about gardening, these are the things you should know about farmers markets. But the most exciting one is that sort of side picture there, is they wrote a curriculum about food justice. And so they really drew from their own life and their own experience with food and identified what are the things that make a solid food literacy, food justice curriculum. So this summer, they did that over March break. This summer, we're using that curriculum. So they said people need to know about income security. They need to know housing prices are tied to food access. We want to know why there's only low-quality produce available in communities where there's high proportions of people of color. We want to talk about poverty. We want to talk about trade. We want to talk about access. We want to talk about composting. Like, composting is a big part of our program. And the great part of that is that students are now in a program where they're learning a curriculum that is entirely rooted in their lived experience and their context. And we hire 5 students back as leadership students every year. It's those 5 students. They're great. This is their second summer with School Grown. And they wrote the curriculum that their peers are currently participating in. And so now new people to the program get to see their own peers as like positive influences, as role models, as smart, as knowledgeable, as really brilliant people. And so part of that is because of the collaboration. Because I easily could have just said, I'm going to decide what you need to know, and you're going to know it. I have the power to do that, right? But part of it is like deciding to like share that power and sort of democratize that power and collaborate in those ways. So this is some of the pictures they did. We did like a process where they identified issues, then they went and took pictures about those issues, and then they read those pictures, which is pretty great. And then I guess I'll just end with like every year on the last day of the program, we cook a meal from scratch. So they have these cooking classes throughout the summer. And usually in the beginning, they're like, where are the recipes? Like, get all my ingredients, like follow each step, which is a good skill to have, right? To be able to like read and follow a recipe and know what all those measurements mean and all those like cooking terms. And the last day of the program last year, we said we have a garden and we have a pantry and we have to make a meal. And there are no recipes. And at first they were like, what are we going to do? And we were like, we have... this is what we have. We have a kitchen full of ingredients. We have all of these resources available to us, and we need to make some type of celebration of our program. And there for sure was a moment of panic, but that panic quickly turned to people just throwing in what they knew, giving ideas, building on each other's ideas, saying yes to other people. Someone says we should grill it. Yes, sounds good. Let's go grill it. While they're up there, they think of new ingredients, new ideas. And on this last day of the program, I had purchased some chips, party foods, right? It's end of day party time. And we sat down to this meal and they forgot about the junk food. And then I said oh yeah, there's chips and cookies. And they were like, oh, it's fine. And instead they were eating zucchini hummus. I never heard of that before. It was delicious. And these salads and these crostinis and these really beautiful dishes that came entirely out of people just contributing to each other and sharing with each other. And I guess that phrase as a food metaphor, too many cooks in the kitchen, not accurate. The more cooks you have, the better that food is, because it's going to be more layered and it's going to be richer and it's going to be more spicy and sweet and vibrant and balanced and delicious. And so sure, you want to figure out how that all fits together, but everyone has to be a part of that, because once you do that is when you have this really rich, robust life, is when you actually take those people that are around you and draw them in and eat some good food. That's it.